at 7:30 on Tuesday, December 22nd, via teleconference. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Susan Lovering, and Alderman Brandon Michael Laws will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As president of the Board of Aldermen, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, dial 1-929-205-6099. The meeting ID is 810-7353-8089. The passcode is 107952. The public may also view the meeting via channel 16. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at nashuanh.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure.
Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you, during the meeting, which was required under the right to know law. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
I'm present. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone.
Alderman Clee.
I am here. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here. I can hear everyone and I'm alone in this room.
Alderman Dowd.
I am present. I can hear everyone and I'm alone here in this room.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, I am here. I can hear everything and I am alone.
Alderman Clemons.
I am present. I can hear everyone and I'm by myself.
Alderman Lopez.
I'm here. I can hear everyone and I'm alone.
Alderman Tenza.
I'm present. I can hear everyone and I'm alone.
Alderwoman Lou.
I'm here alone and I can hear you.
Alderman Jettie.
I'm here alone and I can hear the proceedings.
Alderman Schmidt.
I am present and I am alone in the room and can hear everyone.
Alderman Laws.
I'm here, I'm alone, and I can hear you.
Alderman Cleaver.
I'm present, alone, and I can hear everybody. Thank you.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
I am present. I'm in the room at the hospital with my husband, and I can hear everyone. And I'm using earphones, so no one can hear us.
Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here, I'm alone, and I can hear everyone.
You have 15 in attendance.
Thank you. Also in attendance this evening is Mayor Jim Donches and Deputy Corporation Counsel Celia Leonard. Mayor, do you wish to address the board this evening?
Yes, Madam President. Well, as you know, this is the last meeting of 2020. Certainly, this has been an unusual year and a tough year. We've faced this pandemic, COVID-19, for the last 10 months or so. We've taken extraordinary measures in doing so. And of course, many families have been impacted through people who've become sick, and even some of our neighbors and friends have passed away as a result of the pandemic. Now, it seems that we have some months to go, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, because the vaccine has arrived in Nashua, at least in its the first shipments. Doses of the vaccine were received at the hospitals, and a couple hundred doses were administered to some of the frontline healthcare workers at both of the hospitals. And we are being told by the state of New Hampshire that more vaccine will be coming soon. Of course, the state is in charge of the order of priority and in terms of distributing the vaccine to various communities. But maybe by within a few months, end of March, maybe end of April, we will have enough doses that many people can receive the virus. Receive the vaccine to fight the virus. So I hope people will be careful over the holidays. Make sure that you socially distance, even with families and friends. Use your masks, use your hand sanitizer, wash your hands, all of the cautions that we've been giving through all these months, because we want to keep everybody as safe as possible between now and when we expect that the vaccine and widespread immunity will exist. Now, there were a couple things that I wanted to specifically mention, Madam President, in addition to, of course, the COVID-19. City employees have been doing a great job throughout the pandemic across city government. Our public health department, our nurses, our first responders, people in City Hall have worked remotely and come up with many innovations to make sure we could continue to serve the people of Nashua. But one bright spot that did happen is we got the lead grant that you see on the agenda, $5.7 million. This is a competitive grant. We've gotten it several times before. But the reason we were awarded $5.7 million, which is the largest that we've ever received, is that Carrie Skeena and her team have done such a great job with the previous lead grants we've gotten, in terms of getting the money out, in terms of getting our apartment units de-leaded. $5.7 million will get us about more than 200 apartment units de-leaded. And Madam President, as you know, once an apartment is de-leaded, the apartment is subject to an affordable housing limitation for 5 years. So it helps to provide affordable housing as well. So I want to thank Carrie and everyone who's worked so hard on that program over the years. Another thing that certainly is a bright spot is that the Soup Kitchen and Shelter has raised the funds and has made initial improvements to the building, the St. Patrick's School, former St. Patrick's School building on Spring Street, and has finished the sort of the basement level to the point where within a week or two, that will be usable for homeless individuals, both men and women. We went on a tour of the existing Soup Kitchen shelter on Ash Street today. Tom Lopez, Alderman Tom Lopez from Ward 4 was part of the tour as well. And conditions over there are pretty rough, and the new shelter is just another world. So the Soup Kitchen has done a very good job in terms of beginning on that project. They still need to raise some additional funds and complete the upper floors, but it is very promising, and I think this will be a boost forward in terms of our effort to make sure that everything that we do everything we can to make sure that anyone who wants a place to live, to stay, roof over their head in Nashua can get it. I would like to conclude, Madam President, by wishing everybody happy and safe holidays. I'm talking about all the members of the board, of course, but all of our community members, everybody who works for the city. It is, again, a time when we want to get together with family, even with the pandemic. So again, just please exercise caution, and let's all return to a renewal in 2021. And hopefully we'll see conditions improve next year, and we can get on with life in a more normal fashion.
You're on mute.
By the time we get used to this mute, we'll be back in person. Responses to the remarks of the mayor? Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, I just wanted to thank him for bringing up the new shelter. I actually just missed you, Jim. I was coming as you were leaving, so I got to get in there as well. And I know that the board worked really hard to put those beds in last weekend. So Michael was saying that hopefully it'll be ready to go in the next couple of weeks, first week in January. So I think I commend them for stepping up and meeting the need right now that we have. And the rest of the building will be renovated by 2022. So we'll have a lot more space for families. We've expanded for women, single women as well. So we're looking forward to being fully open, but I think the emergency opening is really critical. So thanks to everyone who was involved.
Anyone else? Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I echo Alderwoman Kelly's comments about the shelter, but I'd also like to add to what the mayor said about Carrie Skeena and her crew, as well as Director Marchant. The city is lucky to have them for the grants that they've helped us get. I know that they helped secure the Lock Street grant and so many others that I've heard of since I've been here, and they helped shape the city. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much for all their hard work. So thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the mayor's comments about the tour of Ash Street. The exciting thing, particularly about Spring Street, is the possibility that it may be opened very, very soon. With the onset of COVID-19, emergency shelters were all forced to reduce their capacity considerably. The state had an opportunity to develop an overflow shelter system, and this is back in May, and instead chose to hand out more tents. So we saw a lot of that happening in a lot of the outcomes of that in Manchester, where people in those tents started to camp on the courthouse, and then the state destroyed the tents that it gave them a couple months ago. So largely in New Hampshire, we've not done enough for the homeless this particular year, among others. They're impacted just as much by COVID-19 as anyone else. And it's been very difficult for them because there's nowhere for them to go during the day. There is nowhere for them to even use a bathroom that's accessible. A lot of the programs that have been working to support them are particularly impacted by the COVID-19 restrictions. So it's very, very exciting that the soup kitchen is able to move 6 months ahead of time to opening capacity that will allow for a much better situation for people who are homeless, a much better living environment, and potentially return to the city the capacity that it lost when we had to reduce for capacity. So I really didn't need to see Ash Street Shelter again. I've worked there for like 20 years, so that wasn't why I was on that tour. But I did really enjoy the opportunity to see what is going to be happening with St. Patrick's, the school, and the plans that they have for it. And for me, it was definitely a ray of hope. What the mayor didn't necessarily mention, but I wanted to thank him for, was he also participated in our virtual homeless vigil yesterday. For 30 years, we have gathered on the winter solstice. It's the longest night of the year. So it's the year that we recognize people who spent the longest night. The longest night is the night unsheltered. But it's also an opportunity to celebrate the coming of the summer, and the days from now on are going to be longer and brighter. So the mayor and I participated in a social distancing virtual event that was reshared tonight through the Continuum of Cares website. Hopefully it will be played at places where the homeless will be able to get to it, because like everything else, having to manage our social distancing guidelines and all that kind of stuff means that access to the vigil in person was especially dangerous for them, given their ability to easily access healthcare if something starts to go wrong, and their need to interact with people differently in order to maintain whatever shelter scenarios they can find. So I wanted to thank the mayor for taking the time to do that. This year was the 30th homeless vigil. I hope that it is helpful to people who view it, because we were careful this time to include messages from different nonprofits and how to access them, particularly now during COVID-19. So I just wanted to thank the mayor for participating in that and for doing what he has been doing to support the Soup Kitchen project. Thank you.
Anyone else want to give comment on the responses to the mayor's response to the mayor? Seeing no one? Recognition period.
There is none.
Reading minutes of previous meetings. There being no objection, I will declare the minutes of the special Board of Aldermen meeting and the regular Board of Aldermen meetings of December 8th, 2020 are accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
A communication has been received from Donna Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, regarding communications received from the public.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. It looks like we have 109 people on our meeting tonight. Not quite as many as last night, but we did cover a lot of the curfew issue last night. So if anyone is going to speak on that spoke to us all last night, I would hope you would keep your comments brief, because we did listen to everyone that was here last night. So I'm going to open the public comment period, and I'm going to ask that no one speak more than 3 minutes per our ordinances. I don't see anyone's hand up. Robert, I need your name and address.
Hello?
Robert?
92 Ledge Street.
Name and address for the record, please.
92 Ledge Street.
What's your last name, Robert?
Hear me?
Yes, we need your name and address for the record,
All right.
Robert.
Robert Farinelli, 92 Ledge Street.
Thank you. Okay. We're ready for you.
Yes, so I don't know if this was, I wasn't really on the meeting last night, so I don't know if this was said last night, and I hope I'm not reiterating too much. But basically, I'm not really sure why the Board of Aldermen wants to go through with passing a curfew in the event. The virus doesn't wake up at 9:30, and it doesn't go to sleep at 5 p.m. And basically, it just transmits the same no matter what time of day it is. And I don't understand why there's a need to ruin people's lives over this. At a certain point, if you're a bar or a business, and most of your business happens at at those hours, then quite frankly, it'd be better for you to shut down permanently or until the curfew is rescinded and you could get your normal hours back, then stay open because you'd lose more money being open rather than shutting down. And the economic damage of this, on top of all the other economic damage we had, is probably going to be a lot worse. People get lonely, get depression, contemplate suicide. So I just recommend the board vote against it.
Thank you. I have Rich Lannon.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, Rich Lannon, 11 McGrath Road in Pelham. I do own a couple of buildings in the downtown area that happen to include 3 restaurants. I did not speak last night, but I did listen for the entire 3 hours. And it was interesting to note that during those 3 hours, it was, I don't know how many people spoke, but it seemed like it was 50 or 60 or whatever. And with the exception of a couple of the Board of Health members, there was nobody in favor, again, if I'm not mistaken, of imposing this ordinance. It was obviously a lot of people that had businesses or were employees of businesses, but also some general citizens of Nashua that felt strongly that this was not the right move to make. I appreciate, like a lot of people said last night, of everything the Board of Health has done and continues to do. This is a very crazy time for everybody, and especially them. But I don't see the purpose of having a curfew, and I also don't see where the arbitrary 9:30 timeframe comes from. And I think, as much as the health and the public safety of everybody is so important, I just feel strongly that the safety or the health and safety of the people, the businesses, their employees, of losing their jobs and losing the businesses is something that this board should consider as well at the same time. So I would just urge the board to vote no to the curfew, and just to try to help keep on telling everybody and imposing on the businesses to do the right thing and to be safe, and just kind of control the business a little bit more, to insist that they do all the necessary things. But doing a curfew, I don't think makes a lot of sense to me. So, thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, you're up. Name and address.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Aaron Howard. I live at 366 Main Street in Nashua. I did speak briefly last night, but that was impromptu, and I will try not to repeat anything I said last night. I'd like to start by saying that I have an elderly father who has an artificial aorta. I haven't been within 10 feet of him since March. So I take this very seriously. I've taken precautions. I've made him take precautions. But I urge you to vote no on the curfew, because Nashua has worked hard to be the safest place in the state in an unsafe world. With the tightest restrictions and mask requirements, an environment has been created here that is safer than other options like Manchester, for example. Nashua residents that now go out in Nashua will be forced to be entertained in less safe locations, and they will bring the virus back, completely defeating the purpose of the curfew. In the charitable gaming industry, we pride ourselves here at Boston Billiards in being the safer place to play. Thanks to our efforts and the efforts of Nashua, customers come here because we're safer than alternative charitable gaming locations. Don't make those efforts go to waste by eliminating the safest entertainment options in the state. Please vote no, because there is no end date on this proposal. This is too serious of a matter to be left open-ended. In a theoretical world where the board never removes it, it would continue forever. There must be a reasonable end date, and extensions need to be voted on every 4 weeks, for example, based on some data point allowing for removal. As written, I question if it is even legal without an ending. It also removes the burden from the Board of Aldermen of removing the curfew. it would automatically be removed upon not voting to extend it. Finally, and most importantly, please vote no, because there is clear and definable harm by putting this in place. Nashua-based charities, several of which you discussed at the opening of this meeting, rely on large gaming checks that we provide them. It's being one of the largest donations they receive in a year. Restaurants that are already suffering will be further harmed, and some will close for good. The individuals that work in the industries affected will be harmed by loss of income and possibly having to work in riskier situations and locations. The argument I hear is it could maybe reduce the spread of the virus in Nashua. To paraphrase what a member of the Board of Health said, there is no data to support that this will help. I hope that years from now it is studied and it is found to have been a good decision.
Aaron,
That
can you wrap
means
up?
that there is, yes, I'm very close to the end.
Thank
That
you.
means that there is a maybe possible benefit to a hypothetical group of people. I'm here to tell you that there is real and immediate harm that can be quantified. This real harm should outweigh the chance that maybe somebody might be helped by a curfew. Real people will suffer immediately if you do not vote no. These people here, as of tomorrow, will suffer.
Aaron, I
So
have to give,
please,
I
please
have to
vote
give you
no.
time.
Vote for real
Aaron,
people instead of hypothetical people.
Aaron,
I'm sorry?
I need you to wrap up.
Yep, I'm done. Just please
Okay,
vote
thank
for
you.
real people instead of hypothetical.
Albert Batiste. Albert?
Yes, hi. Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry about that.
All right.
Yes, hi. I sent a letter today. I had sent one to an alderman last couple of days ago. Pretty much going to just paraphrase what I wrote in the letter. I don't see any basis at all in any data that was recorded or actually used in the decision to close businesses at 9:30. I just watched the governor's speech today, and he was saying there was about 300 people statewide that are in the hospitals. And I really don't feel that closing restaurants and bars at 9:30 is really going to do anything. It's going to hurt more than it's going to help. I think that there are other alternatives to doing something to mitigate the spread of the virus, and I think that a lot of these businesses now already have instituted most of those. I would add that if the city wanted to go ahead and ask that these businesses run their furnaces, not the heat portion but the fan portion constantly, it will change the air more frequently in the rooms, and that will actually help in mitigating the spread. I think that the restaurants and bars are all adhering to the state's regulations, city regulations, and CDC guidelines. I saw, I don't know if my letter's been entered into the record there or not, but there was some numbers that I had found about New York City and where the actual spread was coming from. And it went from household and social gatherings were 73.84% is where that spread was coming from. Restaurants and bars, if you go all the way down the list, it was only 1.43%. So I feel that this might not really be thought of fully as far as having real data to support the closing. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. I would just hope that you guys look at the letter that I'd sent in and see some additional facts that I put in there. And I hope that you will not vote to close the bars and restaurants at 9:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Beth Scaer. Beth, you're on mute. Ms. Scaer, do you wish to address the board?
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Oh, excellent. Hi, I was just calling, I was just checking in to let you know that Dr. Stephanie
Excuse
Wolf.
me,
What?
Madam President,
Alderman Karen?
these speakers, yes, these speakers are not giving their names and addresses.
Thank you.
Yeah, Beth Scaer, 111 East Hobart Street.
Thank you, Beth.
Dr. Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum, member of the National Board of Health, said at the beginning of her remarks on December 9th at the Board of Health meeting, she said curfews aren't proven to reduce the burden of COVID in the community. And after we heard last night about all the businesses that would suffer serious harm, I hope you wouldn't pursue an action that isn't proven to do anything to help our COVID spread. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Haley. Need name and address for the record, Haley?
Hi, my name is Haley Gallagher. My address is 23 Brienne Drive.
Okay.
So I am speaking out and reaching out because I, as a homeowner in Nashua, feel extremely underrepresented throughout this entire pandemic and process. And I also just want to say that I was aware of the meeting tonight through doing some research, but I also, and I was aware of it and planning on attending, but I was not aware that the meeting was called for yesterday. So that's just another example how I am completely underrepresented. And I think that the general citizens of Nashua are left completely out of the picture. So I want to say, first of all, I've lost an extremely huge amount of faith in Nashua because of not only the mask ordinance, but now the fact that this is even a conversation, because I don't even need to sit here and give you any facts or statistics. We all know that this 9:30 time there's no scientific data behind it or anything. And I find it completely dishonest and honestly oppressing for you, the Board of Aldermen, to sit here and claim that you represent the people when there's, a huge number of people on this meeting today, yesterday, and just walk up to anyone in Nashua and ask them that are clearly against this ordinance. So I just want to say, aside from that, when we start out the pandemic, I feel like, if you read the website that Nashua has about the pandemic, know the risks, and we know the risks, and we're already doing a combination of mitigation efforts to begin with. And furthermore, I can't speak as being a restaurant owner, but I can speak as someone in their early 30s who is healthy, who would be the one actually going to the bars and restaurants after 9:30. And I can say that I know the risks and I'm willing to make my own decisions. I would like the ability to do that. And I also just want to state for the record, I actually contracted COVID. Here to tell the story, luckily healthy today. But I'm just trying to say that I find it extremely also oppressing that there's no end date even included in that. I noticed some of Alderman Lopez's research that he included in the ordinance, and I'm just here basically to ask for, yes, that you vote against it, but furthermore, I would like more of an update on what's actually happening. So if this ordinance is going to go in place, I would like data and facts that support the fact that these bars and restaurants being shut down at 9:30 is significantly lowering the number of COVID cases. And not to mention, I'd just like to also state for the record that 2 people under the age of 40 have died in New Hampshire total.
Haley, you need to wrap up, honey.
So I'm asking that you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris. Chris, did you wish to speak?
Yes, sorry. Hey, Chris Parks, 24 Bullock Street, Nashua. Just want to make 3 quick points. You know, for one, scientifically, I don't think it makes sense. Every time I hear people talking about COVID, they say, oh, science, science, science. Someone referenced it earlier. Science is showing and statistics are showing that it is spread in the home. It is not spread at bars, and it's not spread in retail stores. It's just not how it's going about. It's going via people spreading it in their homes. Somebody already mentioned it, but I'd like to reiterate it. The virus doesn't know a time. The curfew is frankly laughable. I mean, how does that even make sense? That, oh, we'll do it at 9:30. That way people aren't getting COVID. And I get what the rationale is. Oh, but people will start drinking and they're going to come across the border from Massachusetts. You know, at some point in time, we've got to trust our citizens to make their own choices and allow them to make them themselves. Secondly, financially, it doesn't make sense. Every business is somebody's dream. They put everything into it. It is their goal. They want to work for themselves. They sacrifice everything. They sacrifice time. They sacrifice time with their family. They miss their kids' in baseball games just so they can run their business. And so when we sit there and we say, oh, we're going to do this, you're not only destroying a business, which you're really just destroying out of fear, but we are destroying somebody's dreams. And who really cares if you survive COVID if your business and livelihood is wrecked? I love how we call everything, oh, well, that job's essential and this job isn't essential. If that is the job that you use to provide for your family, it's essential. It's essential to you, regardless of what some politician says. And the last thing I would say is what is the message that we're sending to our kids? That the second that a virus with a 99% survival rate comes, that we run in fear. I was in the Marine Corps infantry. I went to Iraq, Afghanistan, multiple times. I've seen war, and I've seen kids sit there going to school and having IEDs go off, having firefights break out, and they still go to school. Yet here we are with our schools closed, wanting to close down people's businesses at 9:30 out of fear. We lived in California before we were in Nashua. We left California because of this type of government overreach. I left to get away from this type of politics. I didn't come here to sit here and have the government and the local politicians sit there and tell people what they can and can't do. It should be, you know, our choice to do what we choose to do. Live free or die. Please vote no.
Thank you. Tyler Ramrath.
Ramrath of 34 Tufts Drive. My comment is to note the exercise bias demonstrated.
You're breaking up, Tyler. We're having a hard time hearing you.
34 Tufts Drive, is that better?
That's better.
My comment is to note the exercise bias demonstrated last night during the special meeting on the part of the board in regards to the proposed curfew ordinance. Extra time was conspicuously afforded to those commenting in favor of the proposed ordinance in contradiction to the stated rules of the commenting. As it pertains to the proposed curfew, that impropriety is well noted by this constituent and many others. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else's hand up. We're going to move on. Recognition period.
Albert's hand was up. Albert Fates.
Albert's already spoken once.
Gotcha.
There is none.
There is none. Thank you. Reading minutes of, I'm sorry, communications requiring final approval.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding contract in excess of $1 million award, turbine removal at Jackson Falls Dam.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
I motion to accept, place on file, and award the contract for the general contractor for the Jackson Mills hydroelectric turbine generator and controls replacement to Bancroft Contracting Corporation of South Paris, Maine, in the amount of $2,664,500. Funding will be through a bond authorized by R 19-142 by roll call.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yeah,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding multi-year contract award, cartograph expansion for DPW implementation.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I move to accept, place on file, and award and approve the 3-year amendment to expand the use of cartograph software to include Department of Public Works for implementation and training to cartograph software in the amount of $17,283.33. Funding will be through the Division of Public Works operating budget annually by roll call.
Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yeah,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Petitions,
There are none.
nominations, appointments, and elections.
To the Honorable Board of Aldermen, I have this day appointed Lydia Folda of 2 Bruce Street, Nashua, to the Business and Industrial Development Authority for a term to expire September 13th, 2023. Andrew Sonata, 129 Shelley Drive, Nashua, to the Cable Television Advisory Board for a term to expire January 1st, 2024. Eric Druant of 52 Main Street, Nashua, to the Cultural Connections Committee for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. Mary Lou Blaisdell of 32 Webster Street, Nashua, and Richard Lannon of 7D Taggart Drive, Nashua, to the Downtown Improvement Committee for terms to expire December 31st, 2023. Jennifer Inad of 72 Hickory Lane, Hollis, to the Nashua Arts Commission for a term to expire February 1st, 2024. Thomas Monahan of 28 Swart Terrace, Nashua, to the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority for a term to expire October 31st, 2023. and J. McCara of 13 Mount Pleasant Street, Nashua, to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a term to expire September 11th, 2023, and respectfully request that these appointments be confirmed.
There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee. Reports of committees. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 7th, 2020 Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 9th, 2020 Budget Review Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 14th, 2020 Human Affairs Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 16th, 2020 Finance Committee be accepted and placed on file. And there being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 17th, 2020 Committee on Infrastructure accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of mayor's appointments.
The Conservation Commission,
Yes.
to the Conservation Commission for a confirmation of the mayor's appointment. Before you is Joel Ackerman of 13 Woodcrest Drive, Nashua, for a term to expire December 31st, 2023, and Joshua Hoser of 9 Cobble Hill Road, Nashua, also for a term to expire December 31st, 2023.
There being no objection, I will confirm the reappointments of Joel Ackerman, 13 Woodcrest Drive, Nashua, and Joshua Hauser of 9 Cobble Hill Road, Nashua, for terms to expire December 31st, 2023 to the Conservation Commission. Are Mr. Ackerman and Joshua Hauser here tonight to take the oath of office?
Joel Ackerman is here.
Okay. With Joshua Hauser, he'll be sworn in at a later date. Attorney Leonard?
Yes. Could you please raise your right hand? And do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on you as a member of the Conservation Commission according to the best of your abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire?
I will.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. Ackerman.
Master Plan Committee, before you is the reappointment of Bob James and new appointment of Heidi L. McDonald.
There being no objection, I will confirm the new appointments of Bob James, 20 Trafalgar Square, Suite 101, Nashua, and Heidi L. McDonald of 42A Chestnut Street, Nashua, to the Master Plan Committee. I did see Mr. James, and I believe Heidi is on tonight. So if the two of you could unmute yourselves, and Attorney Leonard.
I'll respond to either. All right, are they both here? I think I can read it at the same time, and because it's the same committee.
I'm here.
Okay, great. And Bob?
Yes, both are here.
Mr. Johnson's, okay, so we'll raise your hand, please, your right hand. Do you each solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on you as a member of the Master Plan Committee, according to the best of your abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire?
I will.
Congratulations. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution R 2089, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $30,345 from the United States Department of Justice into Police Grant Activity 2020 Justice Assistance Grant, multi-jurisdictional.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-20-089 by roll call.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
yes,
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
that motion carries and resolution 2089 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution R 2091, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of a $5,700,000 lead-based paint hazard reduction grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to motion for final passage of R 20-091 by roll call, please. And may I make a comment?
You may.
Thank you so much. I just want to repeat what I said at the beginning of this meeting. We have an incredible staff who make these things happen. And as the mayor said, it is such an incredible grant. $5.7 million awarded is just incredible. And it speaks to our employees who are so dedicated to.
Thank you, Alderman Clee. Motion is for final passage of resolution 2091. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
yes,
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Resolution 2091 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution R 2097, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Public Library Board of Trustees and Nashua Public Library Employees, AFT FPE, local number 4831, from July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2023, and authorizing a related transfer.
Alderman Clemons.
Thank you. I move for final passage of R 2097 by roll call.
The motion is for final passage. By roll call. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
yes,
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet,
Yes.
Sorry about the.
and Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Resolution 20-97 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution R 2101, authorizing release of certain pedestrian walkway easements.
Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for final passage of R 20-101 by roll call.
The motion is for final passage of R 2101 by roll call. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
that motion carries and resolution 20-101 is declared duly adopted. Unfinished business ordinances.
Second reading of ordinance 02033, replacing Corporation Counsel with the Administrative Services Division Director on the Cable Television Advisory Board, CTAB.
Alderman Cleaver,
I move for final passage of 20-33 by roll call, please.
the motion is for final passage of ordinance 20-33 by roll call. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Would you like a wheel?
Sorry,
call
yes.
out When you're ready to go.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Ordinance 20-33 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance 02037, establishing a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on Robinson Road.
Alderwoman Lou,
Thank you. I move that we pass ordinance 20-037 by roll call.
motion is for final passage of ordinance 20-37 by roll call. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes,
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
that motion carries and ordinance 2037 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance 02038, establishing a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on Charlotte Avenue.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for final passage of 020-038 by roll call and like to speak to it.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes, just very quickly, we just went through the Safe Schools construction on Charlotte Avenue, and we'll be repaving the street in the spring. And we will have flashing light indicators on either side of the school, limiting it to 20 miles an hour when people are in school. Right now, it's a 30 mile an hour, and the neighbors all ask for a 25 mile an hour speed limit so that people get used to going slow in front of a school. People have been caught doing excessive speed on Charlotte Avenue. We want to slow that down. Thank you.
motion before us is for final passage. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
yes,
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
yes,
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
yes,
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Ordinance 20-38 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance 02039, updating the financial standards for the city's welfare guidelines.
Alderman Karen.
I'm sorry, I didn't have this one. I'd like to put in a motion for final passage of ordinance 0-20-039 by roll call, please.
Motion is for final passage by roll call. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes,
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
yes,
Alderman Jettie,
yes,
Alderman Schmidt,
yes,
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
yes,
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Ordinance 20-39 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance 02044, relative to a ban on certain indoor activities for certain businesses starting at 9:30 p.m.
Why is that not on my agenda?
Really?
Oh,
Further
there,
down.
there it is. It's right there. I'm sorry, my bad. Alderman Lopez.
I'd like to make a recommendation for final passage of 0-20-044 by roll call, and I would like to speak to it.
Alderman Lopez.
So this, I'm gonna outline a little bit of what the board probably knows, but just because the public is still tuning in, there are a number of people who noted that they hadn't actually heard the other meetings, so this might seem a little bit redundant, but we have a Board of Health with 3 physicians on it, and their role is to make public health recommendations for the general welfare and health of the Nashua area. They were the ones that we turned to for everything from whether dogs can eat in restaurants or how we're going to handle a Lyme disease outbreak. That's what they normally handle. This year we have a pandemic. They've been acting really in the way that the city originally intended, and we've been fortunate enough to have a Board of Health with 2 experts in disease control. So we reviewed their recommendations, for example, for the mask mandate and for the amendment to it that was subsequent. This is a similar recommendation as the liaison to the Board of Health. I'm happy to sponsor it, and I support their position. Reading the ordinance somewhat, well, actually, let me go back a little bit. In addition to them making the recommendation tonight, they have met, I think, 3 or 4 different meetings, which were very similar in public turnout to what we've been seeing tonight. Anybody saying, oh, I've never seen this kind of turnout before, has not been paying attention to the Board of Health meetings. Those 3 health members managed their format in a way that they took all public questions and tried to engage in education of public health principles and need, making an effort to try to respond and interact with the people who are commenting. So they've been working on this general issue of outbreak since really February. More recently, they've been looking at the curfew following its imposition by Massachusetts, but more specifically as it referred to the Thanksgiving outbreak, which this was brought up in advance by a member of the public who was concerned, or actually a member of the board, who was concerned about the run up to Thanksgiving being a known time of heavy drinking, of heavy participation in bars. And yes, it was stated at that time that that person was observing heavy traffic from Massachusetts after a certain time period. So that is what initiated the conversation. The Board of Health had those conversations. They were unable to continue or make a recommendation or have a discussion among themselves due to the amount of public comment specific to one position. There was a presentation by the Economic Development Director summarizing many of the concerns that were raised, but they focused on interacting with people. So they had to postpone the issue because there wasn't time, number one, for them to discuss it. And number two, they didn't want to put businesses in an awkward position by trying to implement something without providing proper notice or awareness. They wanted to give the public an opportunity to become aware of the concern and to adjust its behaviors accordingly. What they did end up doing was they put out the emergency alert for that COVID is escalated and people should be mindful of not interacting with too much with different parties outside their family. They should make arrangements to celebrate the holidays in a non-traditional manner that keeps everybody safe. They tried to increase public education. They continue to meet. They scheduled a number of additional emergency meetings. And I would like to note that these are doctors, and in both meetings, the doctors had to work around actual appointments that they had scheduled that were not able to move. And then in their most recent meeting, they finally had an opportunity to have some discussion and make a recommendation, feeling specifically that this is urgent enough that they needed to make the recommendation immediately. Question was directly asked, can we afford to wait a little bit? Can we phase this in? Can we try to some other things first? And based on their read of the increasing numbers and the models that they've been using, as well as have been nationally recognized, this is urgent. This needs to happen now. This is partly because we have a 3-day weekend coming up where Christmas is going to be on a Thursday, and then there'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where people have for recreational time. And then a similar activity is going to happen next week with New Year's. We saw a tremendous outbreak and increase in spread, much steeper in curve than we originally saw in April when we originally had the statewide lockdown. And we've been suffering that since. We've had more people who are COVID positive. Healthcare has been doing its job, though. They've been making sure that less people are dying. That is requiring more use of ICU capacity. The ICU capability that we have in the city is not infinite at all. And it is also currently flu season. So that same ICU ward needs to treat two major issues that are hitting our city, in addition to the regular ICU cases where somebody may be caught in a fire or in a car accident or suffering some other type of injury that requires intensive care. So the concerns that the public health department is reacting to is the increasing stress on ICU capability in the city, the increasing number of adjustments that public health and the hospitals and care providers have had to make, and the increasing number of accommodations in order to handle an increased load of people coming in and presenting a greater risk of spread. So public health has also been, the healthcare industry has been mobilizing for this concern, which it identified as early as this spring. This was, we knew that in the fall when people were coming in from outdoors and when outdoor dining was no longer a possibility and indoor gatherings replaced barbecues, there would be a much greater exposure level. We also knew there would be a much greater exposure level in restaurants because more people would be in the restaurants. There is a capacity limit, which is implemented by the state, which recognizes this. We also have a mask mandate, which also recognizes this as well. So all of this would normally have been presented by the Board of Health, where they invited or specifically asked to interact with the Board of Aldermen and attend this meeting, and they did not. So I wanted to address a comment that was made by one of the public comments with regards to preferential treatment being given to the Board of Health. Not only did they not get preferential treatment, but they really haven't been directly engaged in this. The Public Health Department, which is our city staff, was invited to present what they had last night, not as an agenda item, but because we recognized that we had not done that and that we typically did. And this was an important issue where we needed to invite them. So having a Board of Health member who is an expert on this topic only be able to make his comments in a 3-minute period during public comment is very unusual. And I think the president recognized that by giving him slightly more time. I do not know what happened to that speaker and where he is tonight, but I do know that in his comments, he had referenced a letter and gave the impression that he intended to be able to present more, or was under the impression that he would be able to, and he was not. So I just want to clarify that no special favors were done to the Board of Health that they didn't earn and that they aren't entitled to as the Board of Health that our city has appointed to this role. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're making recommendations that they're supposed to make. And then finally, I just want to read part of the ordinance, which is in the agenda for anybody who's watching and wants to see the full script. I'm only reading part of it, but it says specifically, whereas there is currently a state of emergency in the state of New Hampshire due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas on March 11th, 2020, the COVID-19 outbreak was characterized as a pandemic by the World Health Organization, whereas the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have advised that COVID-19 is spread mainly by person-to-person contact, and that the best means of slowing the spread of virus is through practicing social distancing and minimizing personal contact with large groups and in environments where the potentially deadly virus may be transmitted, including in particular spaces that present enhanced risk because of large numbers of people present or passing through that may be spreading the virus through respiratory activity or surface contacts. These were specifically areas that were noted in the previous Board of Health meeting as why the higher risk behavior happening after 9:30 was being targeted, why the restaurant industry is being targeted. The restaurant industry is the only industry where we have exempted them from mask wearing in order to do business, because you cannot consume a beverage or food without taking your mask off. Because everybody is indoors and breathing vapors out, that means everybody is basically congregating in a cloud that everybody is sharing that allows COVID-19 to transport itself. Now, many businesses are bigger than others or smaller than others and have different variables at play. They have different types of ventilation. They have different types of airflow, and airflow is a factor, but filtration is a huge factor too. So this is the concern that public health can't set a specific guideline for every single individual restaurant at this time based on the CDC guidelines, because it would exclude many restaurants, but it would also require inspection of all of those sites. And while inspections are done regularly in order to operate, it is known to the Board of Aldermen and it is the Board of Health is aware that there's no way to do that in a timely manner during a crisis and during a COVID-19 outbreak. It is not feasible, or at least it wasn't determined to be feasible by the Board of Health at their last meeting to implement anything specific or targeted before Christmas and before New Year's. There was a lot of discussion and interest in the Board of Health continuing to meet. And I would remind the public that these are special meetings, not their regular meetings. They're putting a lot more extra time than they typically would into this as a pandemic would suggest. And they're taking times away from their own practices and the patients that they have in order to advise the city. But the Board of Health does intend to work on a phased reopening plan. But they felt that enough time had passed, the outbreak level and frequency was such that they needed to take an action immediately. They needed to make something change. because of the level of outbreak that we're seeing and because of the trending that we're seeing. So it has been suggested that by many in public comment that we look at phasing this in. It's too late. We should have done that earlier. We should really have been working on this back in September. But phasing it out is an option and is a plan. And there are no specifics that are available because, number one, it shouldn't be an arbitrary phase out plan. It should be the Board of Health looking at and evaluating the situation and making that recommendation. And number two, there has to be agreement between both boards because either the Board of Health or the Board of Aldermen can remove this mandate once it's put into place. So if we add a curfew, the ordinance actually says both entities could remove them. So these are some of the conditions that were apparently a little bit confusing. I do not think that the Board of Health believes that 930 is any kind of magic number. As it's stated in the ordinance, they're trying to reduce the number of, or the likelihood of exposure. They're trying to reduce the opportunities for transmission. They're not under the influence at all that this is going to be stopping anything on a dime or anything like that. They're also aware that arbitrary numbers don't necessarily mean anything, and that's why they're hesitant to compare our current city size, population, and dynamics to another city like New York, where there's a very different set of variables and a very different population acting and interacting with those scenarios. They do feel very strongly that this needs to be passed. Our own public health department has presented the data that I got credit for, I guess, in the minutes. They're the ones who compiled that data, and it is available on the public health department updating live to the public. This is a problem. This is a concern. And I think as the mayor pretty adroitly suggested, this is something that we are all going to have to be facing as these holidays come up. We're going to need to make changes. We're going to need to protect our family in an unusual manner. And I know everybody knows that COVID-19 has dragged on. It's a situation and a scenario that we never should have found ourselves in, but we have found ourselves in it. But that doesn't mean that it's less lethal, and that certainly doesn't mean that you're less at risk. If we overload our healthcare facilities, we start to see deficits. We start to see testing taking longer and longer to process. We start to see interventions and contact tracing slow down. We start to see less and less availability of hospital beds that people need and supplies and resources that people need. And that's where we're starting to head into. That's why they want to intervene before we get to the trouble point. They have steered us well in the past with the masking ordinance and other recommendations. And it's not just because I am the liaison to that committee that I support them. I have spoken to many of my constituents. I have spoken to many healthcare providers, and I represent a ward with a lot of vulnerable people with different levels of access to healthcare. I empathize with what has been said with regards to the economic distress that businesses are finding themselves in. And I believe we have not done enough as a city, a state, or a country in order to ameliorate those situations and create a paradigm where a person does not need to go and put themselves and their families at risk in working a second job or a late night job in order to pay their rent. I think we need to do a much better job of advertising programs like our COVID relief program, which helps people avoid getting behind on rent or avoid getting behind on utilities. I think we need to be looking at how we can do a better job of making local resources available to people who qualify for them, such as city welfare resources. I think at the state level, we need to improve things like the unemployment application system. And there are several members of the Board of Aldermen who are at the state level, and I know they're going to go after this because of the disaster that we saw earlier this year. And I absolutely think that we need to make changes at the federal level. Spending 9 months just to get $600 or so of cash in hand, a nebulous amount of money given out to different states to disseminate for business relief, and then wrapped together with all kinds of other business that the government has to do, does not give me any kind of confidence that this is a situation that the federal government was prepared for, is executing well, or is planning for. I know, obviously, as everybody else here does, that we are about to see a new administration take office. I hope they take it much more seriously. I believe they do. But right here in Nashua, I can't change everything in the United States. And I can't change everything in New Hampshire. But I am an alderman who is elected to make decisions for Nashua. And I am choosing to listen to the recommendation of our Board of Health, the recommendations of our Department of Public Health, and the constituents who are concerned about their specific vulnerability to death or dying. Thank you.
Okay, the motion before us is for final passage of ordinance 2044. Unnecessary. You'll be removed from the meeting if you continue that. Motion is to recommend final passage of ordinance 20-44 by roll call. Further discussion on that motion. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I have the utmost respect for the Board of Health, and we jumped on their recommendations when they first came out. We shut down businesses, and then we gave them, working with the Board of Health, the guidelines to meet. They went out, these businesses went out and spent a lot of money to put a lot of these safeguards in place. They have been following them religiously. And I to just put a on-off switch and just shut them all down is not good for the entire city. I understand where they're coming from, but they've done a great job in limiting the exposure to COVID-19. I won't go into all the details, but I think if we shut these businesses down, people will go elsewhere and bring COVID-19 back here because those other cities haven't done as well as we have. All of the businesses are willing to work with us. If there's an outbreak, they're willing to adjust like a rheostat and change some of the requirements until they get to a point where it's safer. But until we have data that says that there is an outbreak coming out of these establishments, to just shut every one of them down is not fair. Definitely not fair. It affects the employees that work there. It affects the people that own those businesses and have put a lot of money into it. And it also, they pay taxes and our tax revenue would go down, including the employees. And two of these establishments raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for our charities, who right now are strapped trying to help people that have been affected by COVID-19 and won't be able to do that work if these establishments are shut down. So I am deadly against this curfew because I think it's too large a move that's not required in that degree. We need to look at ensuring that people are compliant, and I think many of these businesses are, and even overly compliant, because they understand that it's their business they're protecting. So they enforce the rules. And if the rules have to be tweaked, then we can tweak them. But I cannot see just pulling the rug out from all of these businesses that have done so much to protect the citizens of Nashua so far. It's just not fair. Definitely not fair. And it's a hell of a thing to do just before Christmas. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of things. The first thing, and I hope that you come back to me after this thing. My first thing is a question to Attorney Leonard. Alderman Clee sent us all a copy of a Supreme Court case that one of her constituents provided to her. It's the Casico, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Casico v. the City of Manchester, which talks about the whether or not the city has the right to adopt ordinances affecting establishments that are selling liquor, as opposed to state laws that are governed and enforced by the Liquor Commission. So I asked Attorney Leonard if she would review that case and and give us an opinion as to, whether or not, that case has any effect on our ability to adopt this ordinance. Could I ask her that through you?
You can. Attorney Leonard?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I did review the case. It is specific, that case was specific to the city of Manchester trying to put in a secondary licensing scheme for establishments selling liquor. It specifically concludes that while that ordinance, proposed ordinance in Manchester was found to be preempted, that the court did not conclude that all municipal regulations affecting state licensees are void, and that there has to be a factual and legal analysis around whether or not a local ordinance or regulation would have the effect or intent of frustrating the state's authority. As you're all aware, we have unique circumstances here. Similar arguments were put forth for the mask ordinance of the city. We successfully defended that through various means, both statutory, preemption, we survived, and constitution. We make similar arguments here. It's an interesting factual and legal scenario currently where the state laws themselves have been altered through emergency orders of the state. And those emergency orders, where they may not be a statutory scheme, certainly affect one. And the city's, this proposed ordinance, although I cannot guarantee anything and do not know what a court would do, I think it is not clearly illegal. And there's very good arguments that this ordinance, proposed ordinance, does not frustrate the state authority as it's currently put forth through the emergency orders.
Okay, thank you. May I follow up?
Alderman Jody?
So given the legal opinion that we can adopt this ordinance, I would like to speak in favor of it. I'll try not to repeat what Alderman Lopez so well spoke about, the reasons for adopting this. But I would like to add some things. The public comments, both at our meeting last night and tonight, and the emails that we've all received, from the public, and I want to assure the public that I have read all of your emails, and I've listened to your phone messages, I hope you forgive me and the other aldermen who haven't responded. I can only speak for myself. I haven't responded to all of them because there have been just so many. And, I've had to spend time preparing, for these meetings myself. And, but I did hear them. I did read them. But I would just like to point out, some, people have said that, there is a complete lack of scientific evidence that would support this ordinance. First of all, people have spoken about the Massachusetts curfew and said that has had no effect, and the cases have skyrocketed in Massachusetts. Well, I don't think that's correct. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health has shown that since the curfew was adopted in Massachusetts, the number of new confirmed cases, has leveled off, has plateaued and has started to go down. There was a high of 4,735, and it's down, as of Monday. A little over 3,000. So there's been, a plateauing of those numbers and a significant reduction. Someone else said sent me a copy of an article from the Lancet, which is a British medical journal, saying that that this article showed that a curfew had no effect whatsoever. Well, I read the article, and as a matter of fact, the article talked about public measures having a significant effect. What it did say was that a curfew had less of an effect than a complete lockdown, but it still had an effect. So comparing it to a complete lockdown, it has less of an effect than a lockdown, but it does have an effect. And I would just like to read something from the the CDC issued guidance for public health strategies. This is guidance to governments, local governments, and what they should do, dated December 11th. And it said that there is a risk of infection through exposure to infectious respiratory droplets and aerosols, even though no symptoms are apparent, because transmission can occur from asymptomatic infected persons. So people that don't have any symptoms can carry the virus and spread it. Outside the household setting, close physical contact, shared meals, and being in enclosed spaces have all been associated with an increased infection risk. Exposures at non-essential indoor settings pose a preventable risk to all participants. Indoor venues like restaurants and bars have been identified as particularly high-risk scenarios. So, for people to deny that, that going to a restaurant or a bar, and exposing yourself to strangers, and taking your mask off to drink and eat, there is the exposure that you're putting yourself at risk to, and you're exposing others to. That is, it's a non-essential activity, that poses a risk. And to say that going to restaurants is completely safe just isn't supported. It just isn't true. It just is not supported. People have also pointed to New York City and said that the statistics in New York show a very low, is less than 2% of the cases come from restaurants and bars. Well, those statistics were after New York imposed severe restrictions on restaurants and bars. They were closed for a long period of time, and then they opened on a very limited basis, and the numbers started going back up. So they started imposing more restrictions, one of which was a 10 p.m. curfew that they imposed back in November. And now they're closing them again in order to control the increase in numbers. So for people to say that our health department doesn't know what it's doing, that it's imposing these restrictions without any basis, is just wrong. And we're not, to say that we're just, that we gave these people guidance and they were complying with it, and now we're shutting them down completely, is not true. They're not. The Board of Health is not shutting them down completely. Maybe they should, but they're not. They're not shutting them down completely. They're asking them to close at 9:30 in order to reduce the amount of exposure. And people say there's no, they haven't given us any reason. They did explain. If we listen to them, they've explained that, that late as the night goes on, people are drinking more, their inhibitions go down, their compliance with with wearing the mask lessens, and more people start appearing and they lose their they don't comply with the guidelines as well as they do earlier. And I think if the other thing that we have to remember, this, as I said last night, this is serious stuff. We're in a crisis. The guidelines that I just read indicate ideally people should not be going to these venues and exposing themselves. But the Board of Health is trying to soften the blow by rolling it back a little bit, and they're asking us to approve that, and hopefully that will have a beneficial effect, which will avoid a complete lockdown in order to deal with the crisis. So I ask my fellow aldermen to please support the Board of Health and vote for this ordinance. Thank you.
Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody who wrote to us. I did read them all. I couldn't answer them all. As my cohort has said, there have been so many, but I have written back and forth with a couple of people. Specifically, today I heard from a worker at Martha's. I asked specifically, what are the protocols you follow? The return message was everything I had hoped for, that people are actually told to leave if they can't comply with the mask ordinance. This is vitally important. But what's also vitally important are jobs. And we have to make sure that the people who are living and working in our community are not put out on the street because they can't afford it, that they're not going hungry or their children have to suffer because of this. This is important right now. If I was a member of the Board of Health, I would ask for this ordinance. I would probably ask for more, because I think that according to all the experts, all the doctors, epidemiology, the studies that I have studied deeply, proves that anytime you are within a few feet of another human who might have this disease, you will be open to it, and it could go through you, and you could be fine, but you could pass it on to somebody else, and that somebody else could pass it on to somebody's grandmother, and that person will die. And that's not fair. So we have an option at this point. We can follow what the Board of Health has told us, which would be hard on a lot of people. We could ask that the folks down in DC do their job and make sure that people who are unable to work in restaurants because they have people at home who can't get sick with this, because that will be a disaster. Or we could ask our governor to make sure that there is enough support for us to take good care of everybody. And the people who would like to go out can continue to do so as long as they follow the rules. Now, when I was speaking with someone on the Board of Health, the question came up that are all the restaurants and bars and such a problem? And they said, no, there's a few. There are a few places that act more like nightclubs, where people will stand shoulder to shoulder with no mask on to enjoy their drinks. And this is the part of the city that really has to take responsibility at this point. We can't continue to close down places like Martha's and Boston Billiards at night simply at an arbitrary time, because we know that it's a few people may come in from Massachusetts, yes, but mostly it'll be people who are there having a great time, just passing this back and forth. I understand 100 people in our city tested positive today. That's because people aren't taking care. This is science. It's worth paying good attention to. So until DC and Concord catch up with us, I'm asking that we'll make some changes in the mask law, and we will ask for punishments of the places that do not follow protocol. And otherwise, we allow businesses like Martha's and Boston Billiards and the other organizations that behave in an adult and careful manner, that they should continue. So I can't support this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alderman Schmidt. Anyone else? Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone who came last night and has joined us this evening. It's definitely been eye-opening hearing from everybody. I want to commend the business owners in Nashua and, throughout the country. It's not easy being a business owner right now, especially if you're in hospitality. My brother is a chef in Chicago, and they closed all indoor dining, so he has since had to find new work. So I know how hard this is. And it's not easy for us either. It definitely is a tough conversation, and we hear it from all sides. We've heard from people last night. We've heard from the Public Health Board. And where I come down on this is that I feel very strongly that we need to continue to support our Board of Health and their recommendations. Unfortunately, we don't have a national approach. And so that means that at the local and state level, we have to make these decisions and listen to the experts who are telling us what they think can help. If you told me 2020 was going to be a pandemic, I would have laughed at you. But I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. And I feel very strongly that the people who all across our city are employed to tell us and advise us, whether it's health or the wastewater treatment plant, have been really well thought through and put in those positions. And so, the United States has the highest level of COVID-19, and we're here because so many people have refused to listen to doctors until now, or refused to listen to public health officials. And so I know it's not going to be easy. One of the things I've done a ton of the digging into the studies as well. And one of the ones that I read today was talking about, it's not just about, curbing, it's also timing is really critical. And so the fact that we are going into a long week, or maybe most people have 2 weeks off, where 2 of the top 10 going out holidays are there, is really heavy on my mind. If everyone has looked at the number of COVID cases since Thanksgiving, they'll see why. And I think we're going to be going into a very hard month coming up. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's vaccine. This is a short-term solution here. We're not saying this is going to happen forever, but I have to support our Board of Public Health, and the scientists and epidemiologists are telling us that this is the right way to go.
Anyone else? Alderman Laws.
All right. I wrote down some notes, but I'm not good at reading notes. First, so I do appreciate, and I've said this before, and I'm sorry for being redundant, but I appreciate what everyone has said. I appreciate all the public comment. I appreciate everybody who's emailed. I appreciate everyone I've talked to on the phone in the last week. I've spent an inordinate amount of time on the phone talking to people about this. And I certainly appreciate the opinion of my colleagues. And I know for me, it's a conflict, not doing exactly what the Board of Health recommends that we do. But for me, it's also personal. And I'm not a health expert, but I have been a bartender for 20 years. So I would consider myself an expert in how that industry works. It's not going to do anything positive. Now, I appreciate Ernie Jetty saying that the numbers have gone down or flattened in Massachusetts since the curfew was implemented, and perhaps they have, but correlation isn't causation. I mean, we don't know that that's because of the curfew. certainly. I know at the bar I work at, and just off the top of my head, there's probably another 10 restaurants or bars that employees from those places come to see me when they get out of work. If they can't come see me, they're going to go somewhere else. They're either going to go to another town, they're going to party in their houses. Because I mean, that's just what people do. People who are in this industry, they like to drink, and so I don't think that it's going to do anything to stop any of that. Excuse me. I don't disagree that the idea of telling people that they should be wearing a mask all the time and be distancing from each other. But if they're sitting down in a restaurant, they can take their mask off and eat and drink. I don't disagree. It's ridiculous. And you're not going to find much argument from me about whether or not we should shut down restaurants entirely. I mean, I would say that would be appropriate in a situation like this. But there's this word that keeps getting tossed around whenever people are talking about this, pro or against it. And that word is arbitrary. And this 9:30 curfew is just an arbitrary measure. And I don't think that we should be basing the way that we make public policy off of something that's arbitrary. It doesn't affect any of the restaurants that are open for lunch. It doesn't affect breakfast spots. It doesn't affect churches where people are, jammed packed together. There are just so many places where people are just by nature, not intentionally necessarily, by nature violating these ordinances or violating what public health is telling us to do. For some reason, we're focusing on bars that are open after 9:30 p.m. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't see any information, and I've been looking. I'm hoping for it. I'm a very open-minded person. I want to be convinced. I want to feel good about this. I haven't seen any information that says that a 9:30 curfew makes any sense at all. And until I do, I definitely can't support that. Now, kind of losing my train of thought here. I don't know. That's it for now. I might speak again. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little. I'm taking it too personally, and I apologize for that. Thank you.
No need. Anyone else? Alderman Clemons.
Thank you. Want to thank everybody again who came to speak both last night and tonight, and the folks that sent emails, phone calls, things like that. I think I've heard from almost 200 people at this point, which is, again, probably a record. Even when we did the mask ordinance, I don't think I heard from this many people. So it's really a record, and it shows that people do pay attention to their local politics, especially when it's going to affect them. And not to say that what we don't normally do affects them, but this is an up in your face type thing. Basically, what it comes down to for me is that the protections aren't there. We heard that earlier, I think it was either today or late yesterday, that Congress passed the stimulus bill, and this morning, Trump is threatening to veto it because it's not good enough. And as we all have heard, it took 9 months for Congress to even come to this agreement. And so who knows? You can't rely on Washington, D.C., unfortunately. It's a sad state of affairs. Doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. You just can't rely on Washington, D.C. And so to the point that was made earlier, it does come down to the local municipalities. And what's sad is that Nashua actually had to make what I call a reverse decision, and it's reverse in the sense that we made a decision, a very hard decision, based on what Nashua could control. And what I mean by that is that there are some places out there in Europe and in other parts of the world where they shut down the economy, and the government made sure that people's businesses didn't go under, that they would be there after the pandemic was over, that people, were able to make rent, they were able to feed their families, things like that. They really stepped up, right? In this country, we decided to kind of do it in pardon my French, but a half-assed way. And, that was back in the spring, and everything expired pretty much in the middle of the summer. And so Nashua was faced with a decision. What are we going to do? Do we close down all of our restaurants and bars? Do we close down the places that bring income to our citizens? What's the alternative? We went with the alternative. The alternative was to close down our schools. We have control over that. We can make sure that our kids are taken care of. It's not ideal, but we were able to pull together, get the resources to the public schools, make sure that kids have internet access, things like that. And that way we were keeping that segment of the population safe because we had direct control over it. Unfortunately, we don't have direct control over bars. We don't have direct control over restaurants or where people go to gather. We could try to do something here in Nashua, but people will go elsewhere. People will find alternatives. They will do what they want to do. We could shut everything down if we wanted to here in the city, and it would have very little effect other than to inconvenience people from having to go somewhere else. So, I wish that we lived in a world where our government cared about people enough where they could, where we could say, yep, you know what, Boston Billiards, it's going to be all okay because we're going to make sure that we take care of you. We're going to make sure that we take care of your employees. And while we're shut down, you're all going to get paid. You're all, the charities are going to be taken care of. Your rent's going to be paid. Utilities will be paid, all that stuff. And then when this pandemic comes over, you'll go back and we'll be right back in business where you were. Unfortunately, we don't have a government that works that way. And it's telling and it's sad because we pay a lot of money in taxes. And, so we have to prioritize here in Nashua what we do and what we can control. And in my opinion, we've done a pretty good job doing that. I was against the mask ordinance. However, I do think that I agree with some of my colleagues who have stated that we ought to begin enforcing that. I've always said that a low fine, I tried to amend the ordinance when it first came in to a low fine because I believe that is something that, on a first offense would not be overburdened to somebody. And in addition to that, would probably make compliance a little better. And I also support harsher punishment on the businesses that just are blatantly refusing to support the laws that we make. I mean, I've been into plenty of places and I've been told by different people that there are businesses and they just don't care about the mask ordinance. They don't care. They don't follow health guidelines. They don't follow social distancing rules. Well, you know what? We ought to find those places. We ought to go into those places and revoke their occupancy permits because you know what? There are places like Martha's, Boston Billiards, Louie, the Flight Center, places like Liquid Therapy that follow the social distancing rules, follow the guidelines. They make sure that the people are wearing a mask when they're up and around. They don't let people dance in the middle of the bar. So, that's the kind of thing that we need to start enforcing. and I support that 100%. But to my colleague's point, 9:30 is just an arbitrary time, because if I go into a place and I eat, I'm gonna eat the same way I eat at 5 o'clock, 6, 7, 8, 11. It doesn't matter. So, I would support doing more measures to really enforce what we have in place, but I can't support this. I'm going to stand with the hardworking people who have reached out to me, over 200 of them. I'm going to support them until our federal government decides that it's going to support them, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So from now on, as always, I'm going to stand with the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any alderman who hasn't spoken yet? I'll get back to you. Oh, Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to shut my video off because I think I'm having some bandwidth issues. So,
okay.
I want to make a couple of statements, and I feel guilty that I'm kind of repeating some of the things that others have already said. But one of the things that I wanted to make a point is that I think for every one of us, this is an extraordinarily hard decision. We've had hard decisions before, but this is taking what are extraordinarily wonderful public health people, both the Board of Health and the Public Health Department. We're going kind of, if we don't vote with them, we're voting against them. And I have a hard time just saying that I'm voting against our public health. So it is an extraordinarily hard decision, but I look at it as the city doesn't have a big bubble around it, and we don't have a way of keeping all our people in. And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If someone leaves Nashua and they go and they drink in another city, Hudson, Merrimack, wherever, and I believe that most of them will when they want to go out, we can't control that narrative. We can't control their action. We can't control the amount of mask wearing and so on. I think here in Nashua, I think we do a really good job. I would like to see it a little bit stronger. And to comments that Alderman Clemons has made, I do have legislation in the works, hopefully, that will do exactly what you had said. And I'm just hoping that we can define what those, from very minor to $25 up to exactly what he said, perhaps revoking some days, weeks, licenses, and go after those. I have a hard time sacrificing the whole for a few. And I do believe it's a few. And sadly, I don't believe it's just our restaurants, but that is where the biggest spread is going to be, because they're going to have their masks off for a longer period of time. But I do see it in stores, and I mentioned it yesterday, so I won't go into it. But I don't want to say the who, but I can say there was someone within law enforcement who shared a story about being in a restaurant and getting up and going to walk to the bathroom and forgot to put the mask on, and was told, excuse me, you need to put your mask on, which was, funny to some respect, but I think it was a good thing. It was kind of a reminder, we all make mistakes. We all get up that one time and so on. So when we put through ordinances to say a $25 fine or something, we have to be cognizant of it. And our Nashua PD would have discretion. They would know when someone just made a little bit of a mistake or something, versus someone who says, I'm not putting it on. Someone who stands in front of a cash register and berates a young cashier and says, I'm not doing that, too bad. Those are the people that we want to go after. Those are the people that we need to be speaking to and addressing. I've been working with United Way now almost since this pandemic has happened. I've worked with handing out masks. I've worked with handing out food. And what I see is that the lines are getting longer and the need is getting stronger. I can't do something to somebody and make what they're now calling hunger lines. I can't make those hunger lines longer. And I've had people who apologize to me because they need food. That truly breaks my heart. I can't add to it. I can't add to that single parent who is in line because they don't have enough food to feed their children and so on. United Way, Front Door Agency, all these people have just stepped up. They have been incredible. As far as the stimulus bill that's coming out of DC, we really don't know if that's going to come. So December 31st, guess what? All that unemployment safety net is gone. Maybe it will be there, maybe it won't. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but we do know that we are creating this issue beforehand. Now I'm going to talk about the flip side of it. We got Christmas coming. We got people who are not going to be listening to the rules. They are going to be going and spending time with their family. They're going to basically spit in the eye of everybody and say, I don't care. And then they're going to go out and celebrate. And then we got New Year's Eve. If I had my way, I'd shut down New Year's Eve all across the state, all across the country, you know, but all that's going to do is it's going to bring people home. They're going to be sitting in their homes and they're going to be drinking and they're going to be taking off their masks and they're going to be doing it. So there's no good answer here. I can't support this curfew. I want to, but I just really can't because I look at the eyes and so on. And I had somebody today tell me I can't look at the downtrodden to make my decision. These people aren't downtrodden. They're being affected because of this pandemic. They have never ever been in food lines before. They have never ever had to ask for help, and now they're asking for help. I can't add to that burden. I just can't. I can't do it. So, for that reason, I cannot support this, and I'm apologizing for not being able to support it because we have incredible public health. And Madam President, thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. Next is Alderman Lou.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to make a couple points. Last night, someone that was speaking was very distraught. She explained that she worked 2 jobs. She worked, I think she said at the Greenbrier, and then she also worked at one of the clubs in town. And regardless of how this vote goes tonight, I just hope that everyone understands that the Board of Health and our health and community service workers in the city have been acting in the best interests of everyone and doing their best to communicate throughout the months what they recommended and what we need to be aware of. And they've been, doing a really good job of improving their communications. And however this vote goes, just know that they believe, and I believe them, that we don't know how this is going to evolve over the next several months. And we feel as though we've seen the worst and it's time to lighten up, but just be very cautious. Think of what I hear that I don't feel great about is the sense that we all we have the right to our entertainment. And I guess I want to caution people to maybe be more to give more and entertain yourself at home if you can, to the extent that you can, because this is all that the Board of Health is trying to do, is to communicate that in mingling, there really is risk. And just because it's not a risk to you, you may very well be coming into contact tangentially with someone who is going to suffer because of this. I just want to say the food and beverage industry isn't being picked on rather. It's kind of like, why do you rob a bank? That's where people are going maskless. That's where people are sitting about, and you tend to see it after 9 o'clock at night, because before 9 o'clock at night, families are out having dinner together. But I just want to encourage everyone to take the message, regardless of whether there's a law or an ordinance that's attached to it after tonight, and please show some compassion for, your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who has not spoken yet that would like to speak?
Harriet Gathright.
Alderman Gathright.
I just want to thank everyone. I've received so many phone calls and I've talked to people dearly about what their feelings about the, most of those that called me personally were against the curfew. But I also had several calls where they were for the curfew. And I've had just as many against and for in terms of emails and personal calls. Like everyone else, this is a very difficult decision. One day I'm feeling this way and the next day I'm feeling another way. So tonight I will have to make up my mind. I want to say that I don't think that any of us in any form really wants to hurt anyone in the entertainment, restaurant, or any of that type business. I do realize, and I think most of us realize, that there's a lot more to be done in Nashua in terms of helping to get the numbers down. And one of the things that I feel very strongly about is enforcement, and not just police enforcement, but also health department enforcement. Because if we can shut down a place because of the cleanliness, then we should be able, since it's a law now, we should be able to shut down a place if they're not abiding by the law. And that works in both ways. So I still don't know where I am right now. But I'm going to say, I'm going to go with the health department, who I think has done a fantastic job. And I just pray that it's not a long-term curfew. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Gathright. Anyone else on the board that has not spoken yet that wants to? Okay, Alderman Lopez.
Thanks. I just wanted to reiterate again that the 9:30 curfew was not arbitrary. It is, the objection to it is arbitrary, to be honest, because it was at 9:30. If it was at 10 o'clock, there's no point where the restaurant industry would be like, oh yeah, go ahead, reduce our resources, because what they're presenting to us is that even just a small impact on their business is not something that they can absorb, and that this isn't small. This is a significant amount of money. Now, there's a lot of contradiction there, because people are saying this is when we make our money, this is our revenue, but they're also saying, well, we're not doing a lot of business. It's practically a ghost town. There is the capacity rate for restaurants, so I don't think that they're necessarily making a lot of money from a lot of different people, but I do think that those individuals are likely much more high risk. While it may not be apparent from a behaviorist perspective to some people that people behave differently at night, I've seen it. I've seen plenty of people that will be much more likely to drink, socialize, go home with somebody. They're not really doing that at like 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And don't even think there's like a karaoke night or a trivia night that happens that early. It's in the evening, and that's basically a function of when people get off work or when they're used to it, having the free time to do it. That's when they go. I don't know that the restaurant industry can change that behavior, and so I am conscious of the fact that they're going to be asymmetrically impacted by this, but it was referred to as unfair earlier, and it can be unfair, but definitely a problem. Gravity is unfair to some people. I mean, the illness is unfair to people. You can earn a lifetime or a long lifetime syndrome where you may think you're recovered, but you have scarring on your heart, on your lungs. I'm mindful of the CIA officer who had his lungs or his legs amputated. People are assuming that COVID-19, if you're young, you can get it, you'll be fine. We know if you're young and you get it, you're not necessarily fine at all. We know that children can get it and suffer horribly, and we know that it can stick with you. Nobody's managed to cure that or recognize or develop a way to resolve the damage that it does over the long term. And more importantly, you can't always control the secondary and tertiary contacts that you have. That's how it's getting into long-term care facilities. That's how it's getting to aunts, uncles, grandparents. And while it is a problem economically that we're not supporting businesses and restaurants anymore with things like the Payroll Protection Act and that kind of stuff. It's also a problem if they have to go and pay medical bills, or if their restaurant is shut down for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks because of an outbreak, or if we have a full outbreak and a lockdown. Several people have said, maybe what we really need to do is close the restaurants down entirely. That is not what the Board of Health is trying to do. They're deliberately trying to slow the spread, not stop the spread. And I don't understand how those two arguments go together, that you'd be crippling businesses, but it would be better to shut the whole thing down. So I'm getting the sense that people are so passionate about protecting restaurants that they're not open to other options. I know several aldermen have said that they plan to submit legislation to enhance the mask ordinance. I don't know where you were months ago, but we could have used that as a plan for the fall in September, October, November. As far as I know, though, the issue isn't necessarily with the ordinance. And I don't even know that it's with the police, because they're not coming forward and saying this is unenforceable, this can't be done. Everybody here who says, I've seen a place that's open and they're not masking, or I've seen a place, you're part of the problem. You can't just watch somebody walk around without a mask, or watch a business. As an alderman, you cannot receive a complaint about a business that's operating inappropriately and not do something. So I assume everybody who's saying that they're seeing these activities taking place is doing something about it. I assume that all of the restaurant industry people who are saying, we're going to do our best, we're going to make sure that we're obeying all of the precautions, are taking that home, because you can't go to your friend's bar and hang out with the other people from other restaurants while claiming that you're keeping your own restaurant safe, because you're not. You're all still occupying the same place, and that's where cross exposure is likely to happen. Restaurant workers are a high percentage of the people who have tested positive in restaurants. Their secondary contacts are often their neighbors, their relatives, other people that they see and have no idea that they're positive, because this is characterized by asymptomatic spread. I don't think there's a group of bad actors in Nashua that are deliberately spreading COVID and trying to do this on purpose, because to do that, you have to get COVID. I think that there may be a number of people, based on what the Board of Health are saying, that are not compliant and are not making adjustments and changes in areas that they need to be. But we're not listening to the Board of Health as to who they are. We're just speculating here. And we're imagining that certain places must be responsible, but not the ones that are present here. And that's arbitrary. So I think if we want to empower public health to do more, then we should do it immediately. And I think if we want to empower restaurants to do more in terms of protections, then we need to make tangible contributions to that as a city. And I don't think we can just say, well, legislation is pending, or, this is a problem for Washington. This is a city that we draw revenue for. We should be looking at how we're spending our money, and where we're making discretionary choices for studies or development projects or that kind of stuff. And we should be making concrete plans with our upcoming budget to say, okay, we need to make sure that if a restaurant that is COVID positive has to close, that we're supporting them during that closure, or we're doing something to make sure that their staff aren't being unduly affected. Because staff aren't responsible for the decisions that an owner or a manager is making. And a lot of times they have as little power as anybody who is being told by their managers right now that their business is going to close if we pass this ordinance. They're all in the same boat in terms of being forced to work, forced to expose themselves to risk, and not having any safety nets or recourse. So if there is really this genuine sentiment that we're going to do stuff to help these restaurants, then we need to, because more than likely, based on what public health is saying and what Board of Health is saying, this is not going to go away because we voted it away. We're going to continue to see outbreak surges. They're going to get worse over Christmas, over New Year's, in spite of all of the well wishes of everybody on the board who's saying, we really hope it doesn't happen. It's going to get worse. This issue is going to come up again. And whether we have to face it because a curfew is even more obviously necessary, or because a full lockdown is necessary, we need to be prepared. So we need to use the time that I think many people are trying to buy here and actually work. So, I mean, there's a lot of work ahead, and these holidays, if you're going to give them to other people, can't take them for yourselves. You're going to have to work on the ideas and legislations that you're proposing and really make good on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who hasn't spoken would, I'll get to you, Alderman Lou, but if no one else has, if anyone hasn't spoken yet, I'd like to give them the opportunity. No? Okay, Alderman Lou.
I just would like to move the question.
Well, the motion is to move the question. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
No.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
No.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
No.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
No.
You have 11 yeas and 4 nays.
And that motion carries. Motion before us is for final passage of ordinance 2044.
Alderman O'Brien,
No.
Alderman Clee,
No.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
No.
Alderman Karen,
No.
Alderman Clemons,
No.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
No.
Alderwoman Lou,
No.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
No.
Alderman Laws,
No.
Alderman Cleaver,
No.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
No.
You have 4 yeas and 11 nays.
And that motion fails. Can I get a subsequent motion, Alderman Clemons?
Yes,
Alderman Clemons.
I would move for indefinite postponement.
Motion is for indefinite postponement. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Jettie.
So a motion for indefinite postponement, as I understand it, means that that this subject could not be legislation regarding imposing a curfew could not be reintroduced until a new board of aldermen takes office in January of 2022. I don't understand why we would put ourselves in a position where, even though you may have voted against it tonight, you're saying that there's nothing that could happen that would change your mind about this. And I think, I appreciate, my colleagues who voted, differently than I did. I respect your positions on this, but to say that this couldn't be brought up again next year, if things changed, if things got really worse, that you wouldn't entertain being able to enact a similar ordinance, given different facts, I think is a mistake. So, I'm against, the reason I voted against closing, moving the question, and it was a parliamentary procedure to close debate. And I think we ought to always be ready to discuss issues and change our positions one way or the other if the facts change and the facts warrant such a thing. So that's why I would be against this indefinite postponement. It strikes me as a parliamentary move to prevent us from taking up this matter, during the rest of our term, which I don't think is fair.
Parliamentary question.
Alderman Dowd?
I'd like to ask Attorney Leonard, this motion, as I understand it, if it's indefinite postponement, you can't bring the exact legislation back. I don't think it precludes something similar with different aspects to it. For instance, if we wanted to do something to adjust the rules, we could do that, but it's just this exact legislation could not come back. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Attorney?
oh, sorry.
That's okay. You're good, Attorney Leonard.
That is my understanding, and how we interpret it, that it would have to be the exact same legislation.
Boy is wrong again. Okay, let's see. All right. Oops.
Okay. Are you all set, Alderman Dowd?
Yes.
Alderman Clemons?
Yeah, I was going to make the exact same point, and in particular, a curfew, heaven forbid there be riots or whatever, that's the most common reason to put in a curfew. No, we would be able to do that, and because it would be unrelated, we could even do a related legislation in the future. It just couldn't be identical. And so really the purpose of indefinite postponement, the way that I understand it and the way that I was, basically, I don't, for lack of a better word, taught the understanding of that by, at the time, Alderman McCarthy and Alderman Bolton, was that it was the way that we dispose of legislation when we've debated it, because we didn't recommend it or because we didn't pass it. You have to do something else with it, and the thing to do with it is to, if debate is exhausted on it, it is to indefinitely postpone it. If there was a reason to bring back similar legislation, we could. The other thing is too, we've also undone, although I wouldn't recommend it, we've undone indefinite postponements in the past as a past practice on this board. So, nothing's ever dead. The board can always do what it wants to do, but this is basically not, it's not to kill or stifle or future debate or anything like that. It's really just, we need to do something. And I think the public deserves us to make a decision on this one way or the other. So that's why I made that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. I understand indefinite postponement, and I understand that we could tweak it and change it and do that. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be better to just table this. And I know there are people out there that are saying no, because then there's too much chance that it could come back. But from what Alderman Clemons has said, it sounds like it could come back anyways. It's just a little bit more difficult. I personally would prefer to see something like this kind of tabled. And I agree with Alderman Jettie in respect that I don't ever like tying my hands to the point where that I can't do something. And while I am not in agreement with this particular ordinance, I can't say that maybe down the road it's something that we're going to need. And I don't want to completely take it off the table and kill it in that respect. So I don't know how this particular works. May I ask for a tabling motion? That would be non-debatable, and And then we would have to vote on that, and then we could go back to Alderman Clemons if it failed. Is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
I would prefer, so I am going to ask for a tabling motion then.
Motion is to table. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
I need a parliamentary inquiry.
Alderman Lou.
So didn't we have a motion that was failed to pass? So is it still on the table? I thought that if we voted on something that it was no longer on the table,
It's not on the table.
but we can still table it?
We can table it.
Okay, we can table a vote, we can table a motion that has already been voted on.
No,
Attorney Leonard?
I thought we voted on this already.
We did.
Yeah, I think you could put it on the table, and then it could always be taken off again. Once you voted on it, that's your vote this evening, but if you table it, it can be brought back.
I would like to just make things worse with a question. I
Alderman-
thought originally that Alderman Clee was tabling Alderman Clemens' attempt to indefinitely postpone. So what happens if we table that?
President Wilshire.
Is there a chair in the room that we're putting it on? Or is it
Wow.
just tables?
Alderman Clemens.
Thank you. The motion the original motion by Alderman Lopez was to pass the ordinance, and we rejected that motion. So then the piece comes before us again. And then we have to, because we rejected moving it forward, we rejected passing it. So now we have to make another motion to do something with the legislation. So in other words, it's still before us. The motion that I made was to indefinitely postpone. The motion that Alderman Clee made was to table it. Tabling it puts it on our agenda, basically on the table until somebody takes it off of the agenda. Indefinitely postponing it takes it away for good until another alderman files similar legislation down the road. So that's basically the difference between the two, and the difference between the two motions and why we're voting again.
parliamentary question of Attorney Leonard.
Alderman Dowd.
I believe that the only time you could take it off the table is somebody that voted in the winning side could bring it up again. Not
And I
somebody,
believe that would have to be at the next meeting.
it can't be before the next meeting. And it would
But
have,
no
and
further.
I think it's only at the next meeting, and I think it's only
Right.
that somebody would have to bring it back that voted nay, not somebody that voted yes. I believe that's the Attorney Leonard.
It would have to be someone who voted on the prevailing side, yes.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so, so Madam Clerk, where are we? We're in the middle of a vote?
We are for a motion. We were in a motion for indefinite postponement, and then when recognizing Alderman Clee, I don't know if you recognized her motion to table.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So then the motion.
We were in the middle of that vote when Alderman Lou had a parliamentary inquiry.
Correct.
Right.
So for the motion to table, I have Alderman O'Brien. Could I ask you to clarify the record for me, please, on a motion to table?
Well, I thought we were in the voting mode, parliamentary inquiry. I thought my vote was recorded to, on the original vote.
We were in the middle of the vote. She had only gotten 3 or 4 of us.
Right, and so we were in the voting mode, and I don't know if you can have a parliamentary inquiry in the voting mo.
Yes, I believe you can if you're not sure of what's going on with the vote.
Okay, so what is the pending question, if I may ask?
The pending question is to table the legislation.
Yes,
Your vote was yes?
yes,
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
No.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Clemons,
No.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
No.
Alderman Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
No,
You have 11 yeas and 4 nays.
and that motion carries. Okay, new business resolutions.
First reading of Resolution R20-102, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $35,000 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services into Public Health and Community Services Grant Activity, COVID-19 Vaccine Grant.
Additional sponsors?
Madam
Alderman Dow,
President,
Alderman Karen,
thank you.
Alderman Tenza, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Clee, Alderman O'Brien. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Human Affairs Committee.
And Alderman Schmidt.
And Alderman Schmidt, thank you.
And
First-
Harriet, right?
And Alderman Harriet Gathright. Okay,
First reading of Resolution R2103, relative to the transfer of $250,000 from prior year escrow funds, Department 194 contingency, account 70122, operating expense contingency, into the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery, Gopher Grant.
additional sponsors. Alderman Harriet Gathright, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Schmidt. Is that everybody? Alderman Cleaver. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution R2104, relative to the transfer of $998,132 from Department 150 Police, account 90530, expense transfer of grant funds, into the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery, Gopher Grant.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Harriet
Madam
Gathright, Alderman Karen, Alderman
Thank you.
Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Cleaver, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Anyone else? Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee. New business ordinances.
First reading of ordinance O2042, amending the ordinance on maintaining adequate unassigned general fund balance.
Additional sponsors. Alderman Clemons, Alderman Clee, Alderman Tenza, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of ordinance O2043, authorizing a stop sign on Dartmouth Street at its intersection with Douglas Street and stop signs on Hill Street at its intersection with Dartmouth Street.
Additional sponsors? Seeing none, I will assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure. Period for general public comment. Again, I'm going to have to ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes and raise your hand in your app or in your, on your screen to let me know that you want to speak.
Lori Ortolano.
Ms. Ortolano, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, 41. Yeah, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street.
Thank you.
Just quickly, I'm just wondering why the board didn't put the ASME contract on for Public Works to vote on that. You know, they changed the language in there to eliminate the additional pay that goes in with snow plowing and contracting. And we've had a lot of plow days, and we're piling a lot of money out that we wouldn't have to if you did contract approval. So I think that's something to vote on, or get a vote on that soon, because we are in the winter. Another thing, I wanted to ask the board to consider developing some ordinances to help with the governance of the Board of Assessors. The board voted for a public input policy like you folks did, but the policy included the language for uncivil and rude remarks that Shoshana Kelly felt didn't belong in the policy because it would present a liability issue for the city. And Attorney Bolton agreed, and the Board of Aldermen struck the language, but Attorney Leonard recommended that the Board of Assessors leave the language in. And when they rewrote their bylaws, they didn't cover policy. So the Board of Assessors on their website had a mission statement that they did policy oversight and enforcement. And I did not realize until last week that they have removed their mission statement and they no longer do policy oversight and enforcement. And this is a big issue to me because bylaws and adopting new bylaws, which they worked on in a workshop format, but they brought it to a public meeting and approved it in a public meeting. They didn't tell the public that they eliminated their mission statement and policy oversight. And they have very strict rules over there, much stricter than the Board of Aldermen on what you can say and not say, because they're enforcing this unconstitutional language. And I'm no longer allowed to address policy issues with the board because it's not their responsibility anymore. And I really think policy has to be brought on the table, and the Board of Aldermen have to be the ones to do it. You know, you have ordinances and resolutions that define your work and allow the public to understand what you do. And I really think policy and policy development should be what the next level down works on, so the public understands what's going on. And yeah, I'm just really disturbed that this was taken off the table. I asked Chairman Hansberry today if in fact the mission statement had been removed and they're no longer doing policy oversight. And he referred me and sent me an email CCing Celia Leonard on it and wrote that Attorney Leonard is handling policy review. Well, again, this is confusing because Attorney Bolton will tell us that the legal office doesn't do anything without the permission of the board. And when I asked the board, if you remove this stuff, they point to Celia Leonard, who's responsible for the removal or the action. And I really think it's the board's responsibility. But you have to develop ordinances for that board because that's your job, not theirs. They state that they're governed by state laws. They don't follow the state laws. They state that they're governed by the charter. The charter actually has all the language has been repealed and stricken for the Board of Assessors. And the only thing standing in there,
please.
Yeah, the only thing standing in there is the open records clause, and that's not being followed. And now I can't find any ordinances. So I'm hoping the Board of Aldermen will help me with ordinance development for the Board of Assessors. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Scaer.
Hi, Beth Scaer, 111 East Hobart Street. Thank you very much to the aldermen that voted against the curfew. I'm very grateful. I was very concerned listening to the restaurant owners and staff last night talk about the financial difficulties and possible business failures they were facing. And also I wanted to say I was very concerned to see on Bobby Bagley's public health page that Nash was welcoming to all genders. And I checked to see how many genders we're up to. It's 112 genders now. And obviously this is scientific nonsense that there's 112 genders. There may be 112 gender expressions, but there's only 2 biological sexes. And I just want to mention again, the mayor is buying into this nonsense, this anti-scientific nonsense, by taking down my Save Women's Sports flag. And he's also buying into the scientific nonsense that women have any chance competing against men in their own sports. They don't. And I don't understand why the mayor and Alderman Schmidt felt like they had to hide that message that women's sports are under threat. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chris.
Hey, thank you for hearing me out. I just want to say one thank you to all aldermen who voted to not. I'd like to point out Alderman Dow for his rational comments, and I appreciate it. And then my own alderman, Alderman Cleaver, I appreciate it. There was a few things that some of the aldermen said during their arguments that were a little bit concerning me. One, it seems to be that there's this notion that we can print money and just give it out. We can close these down. Oh, if Washington would just do this. If we're looking to Washington to solve our problems, one, we're wrong. And two, I don't know why this body and this level of government would exist. Some of you should probably read the Federalist Papers because you're straight up failing at your job and your understanding of your role. We don't want government to work that way. And our legislative and our elected officials exist and rule because we allow them to. Once again, like to thank all the aldermen who voted to not bring about this government overreach. I don't want any more sort of government overreach. I don't need any of it. And I don't think it's what the people of Nashua or the people of New Hampshire are about. So some of you can go back to Massachusetts. That's all I've got.
Laura, you're on mute. It's the slogan of 2020.
It is. Anyone else from the public that wishes to give public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by aldermen, members of the board. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I'll keep things brief. It's been a long couple of days and a very long year. I just want to say thank you to all of my fellow aldermen and all of the city officials for their hard work and dedication in 2020. I know it's our last meeting, and I wanted to say happy holidays to everyone who will be celebrating the next week or so, and hopefully we can all come back in 2020 refreshed and ready to go.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. Just want to express my, well, say happy holidays to everyone on the board. Express my thanks and gratitude again for everything that people have done this year. Especially, Madam President, wanted to thank you running these meetings over Zoom. It's difficult enough when we're in the chambers trying to corral everybody and manage all the various personalities of the public and the board. So thank you very much for leading us through what's been a exceptional year, as well as to the mayor and the staff at City Hall for everything they've done. I think that, as much as we get there's a criticism comes our way, I think that there's a lot of good that's being done on a daily basis. People have adapted to the situation and are trying to work together to make sure that everyone in the city is as supported as we can possibly be. So happy holidays to everybody. Thank you, and happy New Year.
Thank you, Alderman Tenza. Alderman Clemons.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm very happy at the result. Not quite what I wanted, but I'm happy at the result of tonight's vote that we did not move forward with the curfew. I think it was the right decision to make. I think there's a lot of people who rely on money that is earned after 9:30, and I'm glad that we made the decision we made. The other thing I wanted to just say is happy holidays to everybody, and we will see you in the next. We'll see you next year. Thank you very much.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I just want to wish everybody on the board and everybody in City Hall and all the city workers Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Stay safe over these times coming up. Also, I just wanted to mention that having been around the board for a number of years, as Alderman Wilshire has, we have to agree to disagree. A lot of people think that when we take votes that are unanimous in a full Board of Aldermen meeting, that we agree on everything. That's not always the case, as was shown tonight. And a lot of the discussion takes place in the honing of things in committees, and then it comes to the full board for a vote. So sometimes it looks like we just everybody voting unanimous. But as you saw tonight, we had differences of opinions. Everybody has their own reasons for voting the way they vote, but that's why we have 15 people on the Board of Aldermen. We all make our own decisions and the majority rules, and sometimes people don't feel good about that, but I think going forward, I think we just need to be able to agree to disagree on things and try to do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to shut my video off again. Yes, I want to wish everybody happy holidays. I know this is the last full Board of Aldermen meeting before the end of the year, but we do still have some meetings next week. So, but none before the at least the impending Christmas holiday. So to everybody, I wish you well. Please stay safe. And I'd like to reiterate something that Alderman Tenza said. President Wilshire, you do a phenomenal job. You keep us in line, even when we are unruly. And I appreciate that. And you are fair to the public and so on. So I wish you the best of the upcoming year if I don't get to see you again. And even if it's just on Zoom. And happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you, Alderman Clee. Alderman Harriet Gathright. You're on mute, Linda.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa to all.
Thank you, Linda. Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm getting responses from people out in the real world that think that this is a really wonderful thing that we've done today. Not so much that we all voted the same way or that we all voted the way they wanted to, but we talked about it. We had people who actually called in, showed up, and had their voices heard. And this was really a stupendous way to end the year. And you, yes, did a tremendous job. Thank you for your patience. Like a bunch of children sometimes. We're not professional politicians. We don't understand all the rules. And thank goodness that Celia was here today to help us out a few times. Happy holidays to everybody. Stay safe and consider getting some takeout during the next couple of weeks. Give those restaurants a little business. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Schmidt. Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, I just wish all my colleagues Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and also to all the citizens in Nashua, and let's get rid of 2020 and look forward. Happy New Year 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Alderman Cleaver.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thanks for all the work that you've done to make this year a success. Happy holidays to my board member colleagues and to the mayor. And I want to thank and wish very happy holidays to our wonderful city employees. They don't get enough credit and they deserve a lot more. So happy holidays to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Cleaver.
Madam President?
Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to take the time to wish my colleagues and everyone within the city, along with our city employees, happy, healthy, safe holiday. If you're going to celebrate, celebrate responsibly. And I will be so happy when we get back into the chamber because I hate Zoom. Thank you for all your hard work, Madam President.
Well, thank you, Alderman Karen. Oh, goodness. Alderman Laws.
Thank you, Madam President. First off, I want to wish happy holidays to all my colleagues. I also want to say that I'm glad that we had the outcome that we did tonight, but I want to speak specifically to any of my colleagues in the bar and restaurant industry who are still listening. Just because we didn't vote for a curfew tonight doesn't mean that it's time to relax. And we have a tremendous amount of responsibility to the public to keep them safe, even when they don't believe that's what we're doing. And trust me, I know how annoying it is to constantly tell people to pull their mask over their nose and to tell them to sit down at a table and tell them they can't have a party of more than 6 and they can't move chairs around. And if any of you who come into the bar that I work in understand that we are all just hanging on barely. And I need you to do the same. I need you all to start focusing on the ordinance that's in place and start doing everything that you possibly can to keep people safe, because it's our responsibility. The Board of Aldermen has given us the opportunity to continue working, and the only way we're going to stay in business is if we do the right thing and protect everyone. So thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. I love you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Alderman Laws. Alderman Jettie.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I want to congratulate Joel Ackerman, an outstanding citizen here in Ward 5, on his reappointment to the Conservation Commission. And I too extend happy holidays and especially a happy new year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Jettie. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I want to wish a happy holidays to all of my fellow aldermen, and definitely a happy new year. I wanted to, I already spoke at length about the changes we had to make to the homeless vigil. We also had to modify our usual decorating the veterans home thing. And so I want to thank Alderman Klee for really stepping up with all the other things that we've been doing. And well, personally, I've been very committed to other things like mobile crisis and all kinds of stuff like that. And I was concerned that the extra changes we had to make this year in order to keep it socially distant, in order to make food delivery instead of a party, like individually packaged and safe and all that kind of stuff, would be difficult to overcome. But she really stepped up and she got a lot of people involved and engaged to support it. So we were able to fundraise enough to give the veterans all a Christmas dinner, a ham dinner by Soul Sisters. And then we also have gift cards for the winning veteran hallways. They usually get into a competition over who can decorate their hallway the most. So I really want to say thank you to Trish for stepping forward with that. Alderman Jettie is the clerk for that organization, so thank you to him too. And then I was thinking along the same lines as Alderman Laws about needing to comment on what we did tonight and what we will be doing moving forward. So I think it's important for the restaurant industry to understand that there is no Board of Aldermen meeting for several weeks. So this cannot be taken off the table. But in the event of a crisis, it's important for the other public members who are concerned about risk of transmission and outbreak and that kind of stuff to know that we did literally keep it on the table. But based on a lot of the feedback, I think it would be good for me to do a little bit of what I was recommending to the other aldermen who are proposing legislation. And I'm going to try to talk to the Board of Health and have them do some kind of workshopping meeting so that it isn't such an austere, like we are definitely going to close restaurants at 9:30. I know that at least one member of the public, as a restaurant owner, had mentioned that she'd be willing to work on coming up with some kind of phasing plan, and if a different time makes more sense, then we can look at that. So assuming the worst, because that's how I roll, and that we will continue to need to address this issue, we can use this time to better plan it. And so the restaurant industry should know that Christmas, New Year's, these upcoming holidays, they'll be able to do what they can with them safely. And there isn't going to be this looming over their head. But then also we can try to request productive input so that if it does need to be addressed again, we're a little more prepared and a little more organized. So I plan to talk to the Board of Health about that and try to figure it out over the holidays. So thank you everybody for indulging me. To the gentleman who spoke earlier and said, something to the effect of, we all get 3 minutes to speak and then this asshole can go on. I can't believe what I've become. So thank you for pointing that out. I used to sit in the exact situation in the Board of Aldermen meeting. So I'll try to be brief, but I do have to be attentive to my responsibilities as a liaison and make sure I actually introduce legislation effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd just like to say that my vote tonight on the curfew was about fairness. I could support enforcement, but a curfew just doesn't sit right with me. It seems punitive given the small number of restaurants that are actually open between 9:30 and 1. I think it's a handful. I'm not sure exactly how many, but it just didn't seem fair when maybe not enough effort has been put forth in the enforcement piece. So that's why I voted the way I did on that. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for, helping me through this year. It's been a rough year for all of us, special meetings and, all the last minute decisions we've had to make. You've all been really, really terrific. So I want to thank you all. I want to wish you all happy holidays, and to all our constituents and everyone in the city, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Committee announcements. Oh, Alderman Dodd, you had to ruin it.
Well, unfortunately, somebody scheduled a budget meeting on the 28th at 7 p.m. So
okay,
the things that were referred to budget tonight will be appearing on that agenda. So that, as far as I know, looking at the agenda list, that's the last meeting of the year.
Okay. Any other committee announcements? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion that December 22nd meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
Motion is to adjourn. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Sorry, yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
And that motion passes, and we are adjourned at 10:30 PM. Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes.